Kentucky Derby.
The turn, the leader, War Admiral, 2.5 for free.
Next it is in the center of the racetrack. Seattle Sloop drawing alongside again.
War Emblem is still there. War Emblem is pulling away. He's got another gear.
Down the stretch they come in the Derby. Wheel away takes command.
Lion Hunt is all Hunt. Smarty Jones is all out. And here is the first undefeated winner of the Kentucky Derby since Seattle's Slow of 1979.
Kentucky Derby week continues to march forward. We are just a day and a half away from the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby looming boldly on Saturday. A beautiful morning in Louisville. It's Derby. Main track is fast. A temperature in the low 40s, but on the rise. As you can see, the skies are clear. And it's time for the 11th and final Kentucky Derby morning workout show presented by Twin Spires as we take a look at the headlines. All remains quiet on the Oaks and Derby front. No defections following the draw up and through now, with scratch time looming just a couple of hours from now. Today's Derby card at Churchill Downs, 11 races on the agenda, features 3 stakes, the Kentucky Juvenile, the St. Matthews, and the Opening Verse. Early post times coming up on Friday and Saturday, 10:30 Eastern for both the Oaks and the Derby. The Oaks race 11 of 13 on Friday, the Derby race 12 of 14 on Saturday. Joe Christopher and Scott Shapiro, and yes, going on record with our selections of various locations, and if you haven't heard about them yet, we will reveal our picks a little bit later on in the show. Also selections from Rosie Napravnik and Caitlin Free and Brandon Stauble as the top 5 workouts for the Derby and Oaks. So information that maybe you can utilize on Friday and Saturday for your wagering.
Been a good run. Looking forward to the last hour here, closing things out. And, of course, a tremendous 3 days of racing here under the Twin Spires at Churchill Downs. Looking forward to hearing Rosie and Caitlin's top selections. A lot of lists today on top of some good information.
No doubt about it. And we're going to send it up to Rosie. She knows a thing or two about being on the other side of the camera, having ridden 2 Kentucky Oaks winners in her own right. Rosie, now you got a vantage point of the Oaks and Derby horses from a great spot here at Churchill.
Yeah, Joe, I'm glad to be back this year, and I love this spot up here on the 4th floor. It's the grand view of Churchill out here. We've had great weather every day that I've been out here, a great track. So hopefully a great track this weekend for the Derby and the Oaks. We're looking forward to seeing probably mostly all of the Derby and Oaks horses out here this morning. I have actually already seen the Japanese horses, and I saw Taxed out here, but we're expecting to see pretty much almost everybody out here coming out after the break. So how's it looking down on the backside, Caitlin?
The Japanese contingent just passed behind me, as you said, hoping to see everybody on the track, and good to see you this morning, Rosie. And you are right. The days you have been out here, the weather has been much better. So I think maybe we'll keep you around for every day on the show next year, so it's not as windy and rainy as it has been. But it's a little bit cooler than it was, but the wind dying down has made it much better. But going to be giving out our Oaks and Derby top 5s on the show. We've had a lot of people asking for those. We locked them down, turned them in emails last night, so excited to be sharing all of those with you. I'm thinking maybe a few people have some surprises, but ready to dive into the races for this week and see what the weekend holds.
Not only can she evaluate horses, also gives a heck of a weather report, our very own Caitlin Free, as we take a look at the field for Kentucky Derby 149. And as I mentioned, it's got the draw on Monday. No defections. A lot of times you hear some whispers about some horses that might come out, but that's really not the case this year.
Yeah, hasn't been thus far, at least, as we see the first page reincarnate Skinner, Practical Move horses getting in a little later from the West Coast, making up the bottom. A lot of the speed horses are in the first half of the field as we turn to the second page, and C Forte, who drew pretty favorably, maybe 12 or 11 would have been a little bit better, but should be able to stay in the clear, as should Angel of Empire horse getting a lot of buzz. 8-1 on the line, the third choice, highest or lowest, depending on how you look at it, of the Brad Cox foursome.
Scratch time tomorrow morning, and that's when Ethereal Road came out, Scott. And Rich Strike got in, lucky number 21.
Yes, history for sure with the defection of Ethereal Road. One defection that Eric Reed and his team will never, ever forget.
No doubt about it. Rich Strike will be in action this Kentucky Derby weekend. We've had an opportunity to see him school in the paddock the last few days, and Rich Strike was not a favorite. He was 80-1 when he won the Derby last year. We'll see if some semblance of favoritism returns to the fore. We saw a lot of favorites win the Derby since the points system was instituted, and Forte is going to take on that role this year.
Very likely will. Has been a heavy favorite in his 2 preps as a 3-year-old down in Florida, including 1-5 when he got the job done, when it looked like he might have been defeated in the Florida Derby. Did take a step back in terms of figures. We'll see if he can rebound, if you will, and run a career best effort and win that Kentucky Derby.
Let's see him in action. This is Gallup from just a couple of days ago as we send it back to Rosie. And this horse has been on the grounds for a couple of weeks, Rosie. We've seen him breeze, we've seen him gallop, and he just seems to be very straightforward.
Yeah, he's definitely a straightforward horse. He's very professional and almost more what you like to see. He's not a super flashy horse training in the morning, but I would rather see a horse nice and relaxed, just coming out to do his job, and his stride is just absolutely ultra impressive. I was almost trying to hold his big stride against him, thinking in a 20-horse field that could get him in trouble if he were to get stopped, but with his post position draw, I may be swaying the other way, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to our picks, but he's been absolutely impressive out here in the morning. Nothing to take away from him. I know a lot of people have commented on his works being, just a little mediocre, but, some of the best horses that I've ridden have been horses that don't give away too much in the morning. Gervin is one that comes to mind. Was workhorse where we were working up from the Derby. We're trying to make it look like he was doing it easier than he was, but on the race day, they always show up, and Forte has certainly done that.
Irad Ortiz, the pilot of Forte, he has yet to win a Kentucky Derby. 0-for-5 Irad Ortiz hasn't won the Oaks either. Rode Nest to a second-place performance last year, right? Forte based in Florida most of the year, Skinner based in Southern California. We're going to go to him next, and he's only been here a handful of days, and he's been coming out on the track a little later. We're going to take a look at him in just a moment, but John Sheriff knows a thing or two winning the Derby. He posted one of the biggest upsets in recent Derby history.
You speak of Giacomo, won plenty of races as the favorite with Zenyatta, one of the more impressive horses in this century. And Skinner just 1 win coming in, Joe, but don't let that fool you. This horse should have no problem getting the distance, should be able to take advantage if the pace is honest. I think he's got a legitimate long shot chance to hit the board. After a couple of wide voyages, it'll be Juan Hernandez taking over for Victor Espinoza.
Yeah, Marcus Hirsch from the Daily Racing Forum, one of the handicappers I respect the most in this game. I think he's very bullish on Skinner, may have picked him on top. We see Skinner, and we haven't seen too much of him. We haven't seen him during the designated training hours, Rose. He's been coming out a little later.
He's actually a horse that I've really liked. I think, although he's only got the 1 win on his resume, he's been right there behind Practical Move out in California. I think he's a horse that could definitely go forward. He's got the right running style. I don't think he's going to have any problem getting the distance. He looks good out here. I'm not overly impressed by the atmosphere. Comes out and does his job, is moving well on the track. So definitely a horse I'll be talking about later when we're going through our picks.
Someone else who comes out and just does his job, and he's done a very good one over the years, veteran trainer John Sheriff. We caught up with him to find out his thoughts about Skinner.
It's really good about chipping. I was a little worried because it was a long trip for him, about 17 hours, I think. And so when he came off the van, he walked off really well, and the next morning he felt great. He had eaten up that night. I think really well. It's a little different than what he has been galloping on in California, but I think he really likes it. I thought the post position 9 was a great draw for him. Puts him right in the middle to give his rider Juan an opportunity to make whatever adjustments he needs to have to make. So I think it's in the middle. I think is really good.
John Sheriff won the Kentucky Derby with one of the biggest long shots in recent Derby history several years ago with Giacomo. Similar running style for Skinner, Scott, but that was a hellacious pace that the Giacomo closed in.
Yeah, that was chaotic. I wouldn't want to have been the race caller for that race. A lot going on in the lane after, like you said, the hellacious early pace. Honor AP, legitimate runner who finished 4th in the September Kentucky Derby during COVID. Gormley finished 9th, but that was a very competitive racehorse as well. John Sheriff's capable of having horses come from off the pace to win the Kentucky Derby.
A lot of the human connections on the grounds here have been there, done that when it comes to the Oaks and the Derby. We've got several first-time participants and others that have done it a couple of different times. There's no experience like it. Let's send it down to Caitlin.
I'm joined here on the backside by Norm Cassie and Raylu Gutierrez, a trainer and jockey of South Lawn coming up in the Kentucky Oaks. They're going to talk a little bit of Kentucky Oaks today. Norm, I'll start with you first. Tell me a little bit about South Lawn as an individual. We've talked about, being in the race, the post positions, your dad also having Wonder Wheel in the race, who coincidentally is drawn right next door. They actually came out of the same maiden race here at Churchill. Tell me about how she was when you first got her.
She's always a professional horse, always a super talented horse. What you're seeing now is kind of what we were expecting her entire 2-year-old campaign as well. I have no qualms admitting that we did a myectomy after her last start as a 2-year-old. Seems to have made a big difference. Raylu's made a big difference, and she's undefeated ever since.
She's owned by Mr. Masterson, and you had a big hand in Tepin's success with your father and him being her owner. He followed you when you went out on your own, and just tell me what it means to have him along for this ride, potentially getting your first grade 1 with him.
I think it's kind of it's poetic. It's a story tale or a fairy tale, to be honest. I mean, if we could pull this off and win the Oaks for him, I don't know if anything could be more meaningful.
All right, thanks, Norm. Let's switch to Raylu. Raylu, you're a really confident rider. You're not afraid to tell anybody when you're feeling really, really confident about mounts that you have. Just tell me about your relationship with South Lawn. You guys seem to get along really well, and just your confidence coming into this race.
She's amazing, and she gives me that confidence. The first time I rode her, she made a very bold move down the backside, and she continued on, and she won. And the last race she won, staying on the rail, kicking on, and she gives me that confidence. It's horse racing. It's all about the horses, and fortunately, Jose's been putting me on some really great horses, and we ran into South Lawn.
Santos Inc. not doing too bad these days.
Not doing too bad.
You've been in the Oaks before. You were on Hidden Connection, I believe it was last year. You've been in the Derby. So you have a little bit of what to experience. Does that kind of add to the confidence level coming in?
Yeah, I mean, just having the been there, done that factor, it's so important to have that. Just staying part of your routine, being disciplined, doing what you do. And last year I was a little, starstruck, whatever, but this year I'm much more prepared, and the Knicks are in the playoffs. I'm feeling good about myself.
Yeah, I see you repping them here.
Absolutely, New York forever.
All right. Thanks, Norm and Raylu. Connections of South Lawn. I'm really looking forward to the Kentucky Oaks tomorrow, so that's big exciting.
Carmelo?
Yeah, 3-point shooter. He certainly isn't posting anybody up. Raylu repping the Knicks. 1-1 series tie currently with Miami. Blue Jays rep Norm Cassie. We thank you both for your time. And let's move on from the Oaks back to the Kentucky Derby and the Angel of Empire 1 of 4 for Brad Cox. We caught up with Jason Luch of Albaugh Family Stables yesterday, and they needed more colts. They didn't have enough colts. They had 70,000, and they bought Angel of Empire, and it couldn't have turned out any better, Scott.
Without question, this is a horse, as you see, that's won 4 of 6. 2 in a row, the Arkansas Derby being the most recent one. Galloped out very well in the Smarty Jones, as you noticed. Feels like years ago, it was months ago, but to victory formation, and has really taken those steps forward since that 1-mile race at Oaklawn Park.
Take a look at Angel of Empire on the track. And Rosie, known you for a while now, and we've talked about how you go about riding a race, and you always have said, and you've said on the show, you like to look at the other horses in the race, you like to look at the other riders. You were riding Angel of Empire, kind of a more out the back type closer, going 1.25 miles. The stamina is there. Like, how you thinking going into the race with a horse that's won consecutive graded stakes and appears to be headed in the right direction?
Well, that's a great question, Joe. And I think one of the upsides of Angel of Empire is, although he's a closer, he's a bit of a versatile closer. I mean, he's not a horse that gets 10 lengths, double digits every race in his career. I think he's a little bit more tactical, and you could probably place him where you need to. He's on the outside, so, in the Derby, you're going to be riding for position out of the gate no matter who you're riding. And I think being on the outside in post 14, he's going to have to be ridden out of the gate, try to look for a spot, and he's probably going to end up like right in the thick of things. So it's nice to have a horse that's rateable, which I think that he is. And you can see in the video here, he's a horse that's pretty easy to get along with as far as, the communication between the horse and the rider. So I think he's, a solid choice going into the Derby.
Brett Cox with 4 horses in this year's Kentucky Derby. Won it via disqualification with Mandaloun a couple of years ago, and the dreaded rail. It's been the topic of conversation before, after the draw, and here's the horse who got that post, Scott.
Yeah, Hitcho, who was more of a late running sort over his first few starts, and then has kind of had his hands forced being up a little bit closer to the pace, particularly in the Wood Memorial when he was drawn to the far outside in a field of 12. But with that inside draw, the way he hasn't really relaxed that kindly in the mornings, I wouldn't be surprised if Manny Franco really tries to take a hold here, settle him, and make one run. I think that would be his best chance to hit the board.
Kind of how he's run, but he's trained a little bit differently. He's been a little bit headstrong in the mornings, Rosie, but maybe a little bit more relaxed in recent days.
Yeah, I saw him out here over the weekend with draw reins, but you can see this video is more recent where he's not, I'm sorry, maybe he does have the draw reins on, but he does look definitely more relaxed in this out here just yesterday, galloping. And, coming from the one hole, it's not a favorable post position, but it does give you a lot less to think about because there's only one place you're going to be, and that's on the rail. So, again, you're going to ride out of the gate for position no matter where you are, and this horse will get to save ground.
Talked about Hitcho drawing the rail in the field of 20, and 3 years ago we changed the starting gate. We bought a 20-horse starting gate from Australia. And Rosie, why don't you take a look at the difference between the old starting gate with the auxiliary gate and the new starting gate? The rail post position, maybe not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, so when you come out of the starting gate in the old gate, you can see for the number 1 post position, you're almost running straight into the rail. So, and you've got 19 horses outside of you pushing you in that direction. So that was really, a post position you're dreading to have, and a position that you really had to ride aggressively away from to make sure that you weren't getting stuck behind and shuffled back, which you can see it's easy to do. So when the gate changed, you can see how much more space is between the one hole and the rail, and it gives everybody a little bit better of an equal opportunity to get position. It also takes away the gap between the outside positions. I think it was between 14 and 15, which also makes that a little bit more of a fair run out of the gate without having that gap between.
Taking a look at the starting gate differential, and we've used that gate each racing day so far, kind of to knock the cobwebs off and get everybody used to it once again. And a few 1.25-mile races, but none as big as the one coming up on Saturday, Kentucky Derby 149. And the time has come, and ladies first. Rosie, you're up first to give us your Kentucky Derby selections for this year. What you got?
So, as I said earlier, I was trying to play against Forte all week, but when I really dove into it, I watched all of his replays, and I was trying to hold his big stride against him, thinking, in a field of 20, what if this horse gets stopped? But after the post position draw, he draws in 15, and I watched all of his replays where you can see that Irad never once hesitates to put this horse behind horses. He never once worries about getting stuck. So I think there's a chance that this horse could be wide, but if you're going to have a horse that's wide in the Derby, you might as well be on the very fastest one, and that's what I think Forte is. I think he's the fastest horse in the Derby, and he could get a favorable trip. My second pick is Practical Move. There's not much to knock on this horse. He's got tactical speed, which is super important. I think he's going to get a good position out of the gate and be forwardly placed. and obviously has been very impressive in some of the fastest prep races out in California. Third, I have kind of I have Skinner third. I think has been running right behind Practical Move. I think this horse is going to move forward. I actually threw Rocket Can in there. I think this horse with the blinkers on has run in some of the fastest Derby preps and could also move forward, has been super consistent. And then I also have Verifying for my fifth top five. So Forte, Practical Move, Skinner, Rocket Can, and Verify.
Rosie selecting the favorite on top, but some long shots mixed in there. And outside of Continuar, I think all of these horses, Rocket Can being chief amongst many of them, has really caught the eye in their training. And we're going to go from Rosie up on the fourth floor to Caitlin on the backstretch. She's at a good vantage point, and really looking forward to hearing if she selected who I think she might have picked. Caitlin?
Well, let's go ahead and pick the picks up and see. And I did. Dermot Sotogake going to be on top for me in the Kentucky Derby. Has a lot of history to buck in the race. Obviously, the UAE Derby not been a productive prep at all. But if you look at the numbers, and expert speed figure makers have all said that this would be the fastest prep were they to assign numbers. And he's not a horse that needs to be in front. He just kind of inherited the lead by default because he was the fastest horse in the race in the UAE Derby, and he ran them off their feet. He's able to sit from off the pace. You've seen that in some of his other races. He's used to having big fields around him. They're used to being around big crowds. I know the training method is really unconventional, but it's working. They have just decided that they want to travel the world and try these races, and they're winning them. So I think this is the time. I think this is the best horse they've ever brought. So Dermot Sotogake for me on top. Kingsbarn is going to be in my second position. A little bit of a more lightly raced horse. That's kind of my big drawback on him. But I think he's probably the best of the Pletchers, and I think he's going to go on to be the best of the Pletchers. Tapatrisis doesn't really do it for me in the Derby. I don't like the post for him. He's more of a Belmont horse. And then Forte, I think, could potentially be going maybe the opposite direction. Maybe we've seen the best of him. And then Disarm going to be a live long shot that I really like. I'm not sure he's going to be a long shot, but he's looked the best in the mornings. He's really training forward. Angel of Empire, probably the one I like the most out of the Brad Cox horses. I think he's got a big shot. And Two Phils, potentially a Wise Guy horse. I think he's being really overlooked in this race, and that Turfway form is not too bad.
All right, thanks to Rosie and Caitlin for their Kentucky Derby selections. And this is the Kentucky Derby morning workout show, after all. No one better to evaluate the workouts we've seen the last couple of weeks than Brandon Stauble. He's back with his top 5 Derby and Oaks works when we return in just a few.
As they head to the backstretch, it's a tight pack.
He's going to pull ahead. The Twin Spires expert picks were all optimistic.
You've got the best speed rating in the field. Don't fail me now.
Man, I love this horse's name.
And from far behind, here comes Frank. It's neck and neck. Frank is winning. Frank wins!
Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with Twin Spires, the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby. Get your money back if your horse finishes second or third in eligible races.
Does your horse have the stomach to compete at this level? Your answer is likely yes, if your horse uses Reline GI. Reline GI is an all-natural supplement made with patented stomach buffering HA that helps support your horse's gastric health. Plus, it's Clean Sport certified, so you know it's safe to use while racing. Learn more about Reline GI, because even a horse with the heart of a champion needs a healthy stomach to race at their peak.
We are back on the Kentucky Derby morning workout show about 7 minutes from now, the designated training time for the Oaks and Derby horses, and they're all here. You get to see the vast majority of them in just a few. Welcome back to the show. As you can see, fast, clear, and temperatures in the low 40s, but on the rise. We have gotten these selections from Rosie Napravnik and Caitlin Free for the Kentucky Derby. Brandon Stauble, a private clocker, a handicapper, really knows what he's looking at when he's looking at these workouts. looking forward to seeing what he has to say about what he's seen in the training the last couple weeks.
Yeah, Brandon got to join us for a few days over the weekend, last weekend, when the action was hot and heavy, if you will, and I was able to sit down, formulate some opinions, so that coming up in just a few seconds here.
All right, let's take a look at Brandon Stauble's top 5
Number 5,
Kentucky
Tappet
Derby
Trice.
workouts.
Just continues to do well in both of his works at the track, reaches out extremely well over this surface, and for a lightly raced individual, just has a lot of ability and a lot of mental toughness out there on track. Love the way this one's been coming in. Number 4 on the list, Verifying. He's trained well all of his career at Churchill Downs, especially before he even started. On the outside in his most recent work, wasn't asked to really do a whole lot, just kind of keeps coming at you. He's going to be running hard in the Derby, as Brad's horses usually do. Number 3 on the list, Two Phils. Started a couple lengths back of his workmate. Drew clear, galloped out strong. He's already proven over the Churchill Downs surface. According to this work, he's coming into the race just as good as any in his career. Number 2 on the list, Angel of Empire. On the outside with Jace's Road back on the 29th of April. Under a strong hold throughout, galloped out especially well all the way back to the track kitchen. Extremely impressed with the way this one's coming in. And the number 1 workout, Confidence Game. Jimmy Graham was up. I picked him up from the 6 furlong pole to the wire in 1:11 and change. Galloped out very strong all the way to the backside. Looked like he had a ton of horse. This horse is reaching out well. Galloped out strong, and those ears were flicking back and forth.
The number 1 workout for Brandon is a horse that has the longest layoff coming into the Kentucky Derby. You see that one was solo in 59 flat. Angel of Empire, known for his stamina. Two Phils, Verifying, who should show some speed from the inside post, and Tappet Trice, who looks like he can run all day long. From Brandon's top 5 Kentucky Derby workouts to his top 5 Kentucky Oaks workouts, as we flip the page over to that, and you'll see Defining Purpose, who I really like for the Kentucky Oaks, with his number 1 workout, 47 flat on April the 29th. Pretty mischievous, adding blinkers for the first time. South Lawn, we caught up with Norm Cassie and Ray Gutierrez. They'll be happy to see the number 3 work for Brandon. Wet Paint, a deep closer, but number 4 on the list, that's good to see for all of her backers. And Wonder Wheel looking to get back on track, the 2-year-old filly champ from last year, who has not quite lived up to expectations here as a 3-year-old, maybe headed back in the right direction. Scott, let's take a look at the Kentucky Oaks field here. We mentioned Brad Cox with 3 of them. Wet Paint, the 5-2 morning line favorite.
Yeah, what's most noticeable on this first page is kind of the stalking type, South Lawn, Wonder Wheel, even the Alice look, drawing towards the inside, might have to find an ability to relax off the early pace with horses to their outside, but all 3 with a chance. Botanical of the speed horses drew the most inside. As we turn to the second page and we see the likely pace setter in Flying Connection shipping in after a pair of wins on the front end at Sunland. Defining Purpose, who Joe just referenced, is Brandon's top work. Darth Vader, who looks to get a perfect stalking trip. Distance limitations might be an issue, though, and Pretty Mischievous drawing towards the far outside.
Yeah, and 3 good horses on the also eligibles taxed. Malathat's little sister, Julia Shining, and Hoosier Philly. Maybe the Black-Eyed Susan, along with the Preakness, might come up as good races 2 weeks from now. Well, she's won the race twice herself, and now she's going to try to pick the winner of the Kentucky Oaks. Let's send it back to Rosie.
And I wish I had something more interesting on top, but I ended up landing on Wet Paint, who's going to be probably the favorite going off in the Oaks. But I do really think that this is, again, the best filly in the race. And I also like the way that the race sets up for her. I like her post position. She's going to be coming from off the pace in this race, which, unlike the Derby, does have quite a bit of definite speed in it. So I do like the way that the race is going to set up. Obviously, you can't complain about the connection. Brad Cox absolutely been on fire this past couple of years. Picked second, I have Defining Purpose. This filly ran one of the fastest prep races coming into the Oaks, but also has been training lights out here on the track in the morning. So she's definitely caught my eye. South Lawn is a filly that ran lights out last time, and I think is going to move forward again. Also been training really well out here. Darth Vader's kind of an outside shot, but I do like the way that this race might set up for her, coming from an outside post and being a horse that's got a little bit of tactical speed speed, and has been really consistent and been running in faster races. And her works, although they have not been here at Churchill, have been extremely impressive over the past several months. She always seems to show up, so I've got her as kind of an outside shot. And then picked 5th, I have Botanical. So for my top 5, it's going to be Wet Paint, Defining Purpose, South Lawn, Darth Vader, and Botanical.
Just moments away from the designated training time, we see the Oaks and Derby horses about to take the track. In the meantime, we're going to send it over to Caitlin Free for her Oak selections. Caitlin?
Yeah, we'll see if my Oaks top selection is going to be on the track today. I had a chance to see her in the paddock. It's going to be Botanical. A little bit of hometown hero for me, coming from Turfway, but she's done little wrong. I know she's never been on the dirt, and the dirt is certainly a question mark, but Brad Cox has told me she's training excellent over it. She just seems like she floats over it like the other surfaces that she's been on. Physically, she is such an impressive looking horse, and as I said, she's done nothing wrong. So I have to stick with her. She's going to be on top for me. Then South Lawn, another one poised to move forward in a big way. Had a chance, obviously, to just talk to Norm. Nothing but good things about her coming into this race, and she's looked amazing in the morning. So going to give her a chance. Pretty mischievous, throwing on the blinkers for the first time. The outside post not ideal, but she's another one that has looked good. Wet Paint, you got to beat her. She's the favorite here in this race, and she's looked good. She's worked good, but I think she is a beatable favorite, similar to the way Forte is in the Derby. And Wonder Wheel, to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. I know she hasn't been as impressive in her last couple of races, but I think you can make a couple of cases as to why she loves Churchill Downs, so I threw her in my 5th selection.
All right, thanks to Rosie and Caitlin for their Oaks selections. We're going to see the Oaks and Derby horses on the racetrack for the last time on this show until they enter the starting gate for their respective races. The Kentucky Oaks coming up tomorrow and the Kentucky Derby coming up on Saturday. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with lots of action. Derby, Oaks horses, the heavy lifting's been done, but the training continues. We'll be right back on the Kentucky Derby Morning Work Show presented by Twin Spires.
As they head to the backstretch, it's a tight pack.
He's going to pull ahead. The Twin Spires expert picks were all optimistic.
You've got the best speed rating in the field. Don't fail me now.
Man, I love this horse's name.
And from far behind, here comes Frank. It's neck and neck. Frank is winning. Frank wins!
Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with Twin Spires, the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby. Get your money back if your horse finishes 2nd or 3rd in eligible races.
Does your horse have the stomach to compete at this level? Your answer is likely yes, if your horse uses Reline GI. Reline GI is an all-natural supplement made with patented stomach buffering HA that helps support your horse's gastric health. Plus, it's Clean Sport certified, so you know it's safe to use while racing. Learn more about Reline GI, because even a horse with the heart of a champion needs a healthy stomach to race at their peak.
We are back on the Kentucky Derby Morning Workout Show, the 11th and final edition, and that means we're on the brink of the Oaks and the Derby coming up tomorrow and Saturday, respectively. Designated training time, and again, you know, the trainers, a lot of them have been there, done that. Todd Pletcher obviously leading that list, Bill Mott, et cetera, et cetera. Some trainers have been here a few times, some for the very first time, but they're all thinking the same thing. We just want to get these horses in the starting gate, let the best horse win, and we'll make some history from there as we take a look at a Derby horse with the yellow saddle towels, the Oaks horses with the pink saddle towels. We'll get some designations as to who we're looking at here moving forward, and we'll get some opinions from our panel. Caitlin Free, Rosie Napravnik up on the 4th floor, Caitlin on the backstretch, Scott Shapiro sitting next to me as to what we think about these runners. And we'll send it to Caitlin first, Tappa Trice. I mean, we keep talking about it. He costs more than any horse in the field, Caitlin, $1.3 million, and he's built like a tank.
He is built like a tank. When I've seen him in the paddock with the other Pletcher horses, he's definitely the biggest of the Pletchers. But what is so interesting about him is he's the most light on his feet. He, like I said yesterday, and you guys kind of laughed, he kind of floats over the track, which is very untypical of Tappets. Are a little bit more heavier, kind of tough customers. He's kind of ridden like a Tappet, but the way he moves and just the way he physically minded as well just doesn't really seem like a Tappet to me. Seems like a more calm horse. He's a horse that is in the paddock. He is honestly probably the most well-behaved out of the three of them. Nothing really seems to bother him. So he kind of breaks that Tappet mold a little bit, which gives me a little bit more hope for the Derby because the Tappets don't have the best record in the Derby. But to me, he seems more of a Belmont horse.
Rosie, if you got to sign a contract to ride one of these horses for the rest of their careers, I'm not talking about the Derby, the rest of their careers, I'm guessing this guy might be a candidate.
Well, I mean, you can't argue with the breeding here. I've ridden several really nice Tappets in my career, and I absolutely love that line. This horse looks amazing out on the track this morning. He jogged over here to the front side, was one of the horses without a pony, but was just absolutely striding out at the jog. And now galloping around, he seems like he's very forward-thinking, but relaxed. I really love his gallop this morning.
There you see Tappet Trice, one of three aces for Todd Pletcher in Kentucky Derby 149. Forte's the favorite. Tappet Trice likely to be the second choice, and Kings Barnes likely to be in that 12-1 range. Take a look at Angel of Empire moments ago, and again, he has done nothing wrong in his recent races, and he certainly has done nothing wrong in his recent training. Brandon Stauble had this workout of his and company week or so ago as one of his top works. And what do you see in just another great appearance from another Derby contender, Rosie?
The one thing that I can say, I mean, he looks out here happy to do his job. The one thing I can say about his stride is he's a little bit like a rocking horse. So he rocks kind of from back to front, which makes for not as long of a stride. But, I mean, it's just something I've noticed. It's not really a complaint. But the horse is... I mean, you can see his coat is shining. He looks fantastic. I love the way he's got his head tucked down. And he's just kind of pulling against his rider just enough, clear communication between the two. He's not being overly aggressive, but he's certainly ears pricked out here. Be happy to be out here this morning and liking the track.
Fall apart race in the Risen Star. He got up in time that day, but really took it to another level, I thought, in the Arkansas Derby, Scott, when he made a much earlier move and was just awesome that day.
He was. It wasn't a pace-dependent victory. It was a pretty honest, pretty fair race in terms of a race shape. And, boy, did he take that step forward. The late pace rating was big. The speed rating was big. It was visually impressive coming into the race the right way, Joe.
Rosie, we saw just get caught a little bit there, a little bit of a stumble there from Forte.
I missed that, Joe, but he did come out with the pony. I saw him when he backed up to the wire here and turned around. He seems very quiet this morning, which is sort of his norm. He kind of just comes out here and does his job. He's not overly excited by all that's going on here on the back side or the front side, but just kind of comes out and gallops a little bit the same way every day. But he's got his ears pricked there. He looks like he's doing well, feeling well. We've got the sirens going off, which means there's a loose horse. It looks like it could be verifying. That's a loose horse. I don't know if we'll be able to catch it on camera, and I haven't seen it yet. It looks like the rider's off of verifying.
Wow. Interesting.
There you see Forte just jogging along there. We do have a loose horse that is verifying, and
they're coming around the quarter pole, and the outrider is going to attempt to catch him here. We actually have both outriders that are going to catch verifying, and it looks like they had the horse but lost him. So, but they're both here, and they looks like they've got him now. They've got the horse. They're right kind of in front of me here. We have some of the most excellent outriders here at Churchill. So verifying's been caught. It looks like it was completely uneventful. Nothing terrible happening, but I'm not sure what happened with the rider coming off. Hopefully the rider's okay, but the horse seems to be perfectly fine. Maybe just had a little short breeze around the far turn.
Yeah, as uneventful as it can be under the circumstances. And you mentioned it, Rosie. Greg and Lee are the two best in the business. And a situation like this happens with any horse. It's like the rider is walking off, so that's certainly a good thing as well. Two of the best in the business, and you know, it doesn't matter what horse it is on the racetrack. I mean, obviously these Derby and Oaks horses super valuable, but they're going to catch them as quickly as possible, and averted a potential disaster here with Verifying losing the rider. We don't know the circumstances behind it, but was caught very quickly. I would say within a minute's time, and there you see Verifying being led off by Greg Blasi, who was, like I said, one of the best, if not the best, in the biz. Verifying one of 4 horses for Brad Cox. And Scott, not something you want to see 2 days before the race.
No, I mean, without having seen it and not knowing the horse and how it'll impact him, it's tough to make
looks
some
happy.
sort of opinion, right? But probably exerting more energy than the plan was at the very least here. And this is a horse that's going to have to exert energy from start to finish from that inside draw if he's going to capture the 149th Kentucky Derby under Tyler Gaffalione. So looks no worse for the wear from what we can see, but definitely not ideal.
He certainly looks proud of himself, and I will say that if you ask my husband, Joe Sharp always loves when a horse drops its rider because they get really full of themselves, as long as nothing bad happens. Of course, you always want to make sure that the horse... the horse is all right, but you know, sometimes it can really boost their confidence and they get to run out there on their own.
Is that a who's the boss kind of situation?
I guess so, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I looked at Theo and I was like, he is so proud of what he just did.
I always talk about their confidence going into the race, so that might be something to note.
Rosie, explain what happens now. So, you know, when there's a loose horse and you're out there on the track and the siren goes off, I mean, obviously that's to alert everybody. If you're out there on the track on a horse, what's the first thing you're looking around to find out where the horse is? You're talking to people. You're trying to get to the outside or inside part of the track. What do you do?
Yeah, so the siren notifies everybody that there's a loose horse, and the thing to do when there is a loose horse, once you figure out where it is and which direction it's traveling, what you want to do is turn to be traveling in the same direction so that you're not heading on with the horse. And then once it's caught, they'll bring it off the track. But we've got Flying Connection here on the video, just a slow gallop.
Yeah, she's probably the pace setter, you would think, in the Kentucky Oaks, Scott. And, you know, the Derby, you could look at several different individuals that might make the lead. We've got a couple we think might be on the front end, but it's pretty clear who's going to try to get to the lead in the Oaks.
Assuming a good break, which has been the case in each of the two recent starts at Sunland Park. Easy wire-to-wire wins for this daughter of Nyquist. She should be on the lead. It's Florent Giroux picking up the ride for the first time. A good gate rider is Florent.
And Rosie, Rocket Can snuck into your top 5, I believe. And, you know, he's a horse who on form I'm not thrilled with, but in his recent track work and adding the blinkers and that work the other day, he's a horse that's kind of moving up my own personal list as well.
Yeah, and, you know, I think that you forget that this horse finished second to Forte 2 back. And, you know, not necessarily, but one of the faster races, one of the faster 2-back preps, and then didn't run his best race in the Arkansas Derby, but they're adding the blinkers, and the horse breezed well in the blinkers, has been training extremely well out here, and I think he just has the right running style. I think he has all of the pieces to the puzzle to move forward, and that's what he's going to have to do, but I think that's probably the direction he's heading.
We had a Spaces session on Twitter a couple of nights ago hosted by Travis Stone, and Brian Natto, the racing analyst from Gulfstream Park, along with Ron Nicoletti, came on and was talking about Mage. We're going to take a look at him now, and this is the horse that he's kind of bullish on. You know, we've talked about the lack of experience, just 3 races. He thinks he's one of the best horses in the race, but not sure if it's going to be Kentucky Derby Day or down the line, but really high on his natural talent, Scott.
I'm high on his natural talent, too. I have a little bit of concern about the ability to get the distance, but more so it's that gate, getting out of the gate. Didn't even get out of the gate super strong in the wire-to-wire win, going 1 turn on debut on January 28th, and certainly hasn't gotten out well in the 2 starts against Graded Stakes Company. Will have to overcome those gate issues, but if he does, he could be prominent early.
Hearing the sirens again, Rosie, Caitlin, can you guys see anything?
I'm looking and I don't see a loose horse yet.
I don't either.
There's not very many horses out here. I do not see a loose horse.
I don't either. Not
Could be a siren malfunction, maybe.
Yeah, considering it had just gone off, that's what my first thought was,
yeah.
Is this an accident?
Yeah, I think it was.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about.
and it's gone off now.
There you go. Let's talk about Mage, Rosie, because, watching this horse train, and I kind of think this way about Tapit Rice, if you could bet a Belmont future wager, he'd be the favorite. You look at Mage, though, it just looks like another horse that the way he gallops, that worked the other day where he went the first quarter in 27 seconds and then finished up strongly. This is a horse to me that looks like he could run all day.
Yeah, and I do think that the distance isn't going to be a problem for him. But to me, this is a horse that, kind of a workman's horse. Like, he is running his hardest in every race, which is extremely admirable. But is he as good as the other horses? A horse like Forte, who passed him in 2 jumps in the Florida Derby. When he trains out here, his stride is a little bit shorter for me. He goes with his head really low, and he just looks like he's constantly putting out the effort. For me, when you want to judge about stride, and I look for what kind of effort they're putting in compared to what kind of performance they're putting in.
Scott, you talk about confidence, game number 1 on Brandon's workout list, by the way, and maybe Rocket Can, maybe Mage. These are the horses that I think are getting a little bit of buzz that are going to be big prices.
Without question. I mean, Confidence Game came in before those works and was a horse that people were very willing to toss off the 10 weeks of rest, but those works are probably going to bring his price down almost in half.
Cyclone Mischief, number 21, was lucky last year, but as of now, he is still on the outside looking in. And, just looking at horses and their overall demeanor, their build, he, to me, looks like a heck of a physical specimen, Caitlin.
Yes, he is one that if he got in, I think would significantly change kind of the way the race shape unfolds. He's one that could be kind of a pace factor, I would say, but he's a horse that I think is going to continue to keep moving forward. When we were talking on the spaces the other night, I mentioned to Travis Stone, he agreed that this race would be even more interesting should some of these A's get in that wouldn't be without a chance by any stretch.
Mage working his way off the racetrack. Again, if you're just tuning in, Verifying did get loose for about a minute. He was caught pretty quickly and avoided any mishap. Actually came off the racetrack with outrider Greg Blasi looking very proud of himself as we continue to see these Derby horses and Oaks horses train. Not that many left on the racetrack.
Lord Miles.
Looks like Lord Miles out there.
Yeah,
Winner.
Lord Miles just came past me. He seems to be just enjoying a happy gallop here. He kind of cocks his head a little bit to the outside. Don't know that really indicates anything the way he's traveling. He looks good coming around the turn here.
Winner of the Wood Memorial at a huge price, and that hasn't been a prep that's been overly productive for many years. Funny side, way back in 2003, the last one to exit that race, Scott, win the Derby.
Yeah, last year maybe a little better than some of the other years because Mo Donegal did come out of the race, didn't get a perfect trip, but got a good trip in the Derby.
Won the Belmont.
One that came back to win the Belmont, never raced again, but had some talent. But this year, definitely some questions to answer. Another question Lord Miles is going to have to answer, obviously going to be a big price. Far outside draw, not a horse that I think can afford to drop all the way to the back and make a run. Not a horse at all that has the speed. So can Paco Lopez avoid a wide voyage into that first turn?
This is the final Derby and Oaks training session that we're going to see on this show this year. The Derby horses will be out there tomorrow. The Oaks being run tomorrow, obviously. It'll just be race day for those individuals. So getting closer and closer to the Kentucky Oaks. Don't forget about those 2-day wagers. You can wager on the Oaks tomorrow on Oaks Day. The 2-day wagers going into the Kentucky Derby and advanced wagering on the Kentucky Derby is available tomorrow. Lord Miles, your upset winner of the Wood Memorial. We've got some schoolers at the gate, some Derby horses, I do believe, schooling at the gate. Might be Mage, not quite sure. We'll see if we can get an ID there. But the gate schooling process, and Rosie, we've seen it the last several days. A lot of these horses are coming into the paddock during the race day. We've seen them consecutive days, the same horses. Gate schooling continues too. I mean, when you're running in any kind of race, you don't want to leave any stones unturned. But that's Cyclone Mischief, by the way. But particularly a race like the Oaks and Derby, you're going to do everything in your power to make sure these horses are ready.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the opportunities are there for you to make your horse as prepared as possible. You can come out of the front of the gate the way the Japanese horse did, if that's what you think your horse needs. But most of these horses are well schooled in the gate, as long as they don't have a particular issue. So they'll just come and stand back here. And the reason that they come in and stand is so that they see the gate when it's not race time. So they don't always associate the gate with something exciting happening, and they don't get overly excited before they're going into the starting gate for the race. The same thing with the paddock. They're going to be coming into the paddock for the races, and there's going to be huge crowds. So it helps the horses if it's not their first time seeing the environment, when it's going to be a more exciting environment on race day. So, the trainers and the riders are doing everything they can to prepare these horses for what they're going to see on Derby Day, which is what they'll see nowhere else and no other point in their career, most likely. But it's super helpful for the horses. And you have to keep in mind these are really young horses as well. I mean, some of these horses have just turned 3. So, everyone, the horsemen are very conscious of making the process as easy for them as possible.
It'll be interesting to see if Cyclone Mischief doesn't, in fact, get into the Kentucky Derby. What is next? You would have to think Dale Romans is going to run them in the Preakness. Maybe thought the Pat Day Mile was an option, but that didn't happen. So a horse that definitely belongs at this level, Joe.
Yeah, and he's won the Preakness already with Shackelford, so that would make a lot of sense. And a horse with speed like that fits very well at Pimlico. Let's get some social media questions. People viewing us from all over the country, all over the world. And, this is why we do this. We do this for the fans. Jason Luch complimented the show yesterday. We very much appreciated that. Gives, the owners and, that aren't here an opportunity to see their horses, and obviously the fans too. So we give you some information and also let you see these horses train on the racetrack. So thanks to all the fans out there. And thank you to Andrew for this question. Which of this year's Kentucky Derby prep races do you think was the strongest? Scott, we'll throw this one over to you.
Yeah, that's a kind of a more difficult question than in some past years. Last year was a very easy answer for me with the Risen Star, Epicenter running first, Zandon in there, Smile Happy. This year, I could argue the Risen Star was the deepest. It was won by Angel of Empire. It was a chaotic early pace with Sun Thunder second, who also is in the Derby. I also surprisingly thought that the Bluegrass came back strong, at least the top 2 with Verifying and Tappet Trice. But none of the final preps were overly deep. I think the top few in all of those races stood out from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, when it happened, I thought maybe the California, the Sanity to Derby was up there, but those horses aren't necessarily winding in my top pick. So you don't really know which the strongest prep was until a few months later.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like any other race, almost, yeah.
How they ran in the Derby, etc. All right, question number 2. This one's specific for Rosie. Who was the best horse you ever rode? And a follow-up to that question is, what qualities did they have that made them so great?
That is such a hard question. When you've ridden so many good horses, one of my favorite, obviously, Untappable comes to mind, one of the best horses I rode. Shanghai Bobby comes to mind, was one of my favorite horses to ride, and he was also one of the most difficult horses to ride. But for me, you've got to have a horse that really has the heart and wants to win, and can be versatile to, withstand adversity in races. Untappable was a horse that took a lot of finesse in her races, and Steve's instructions to me were always, whatever you do, make it smooth. And so that was the challenge with her. But in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, I remember being very wide on the track and being very uncomfortable being so wide on the track, knowing that I'm losing all the ground, but having to just stay confident, knowing that I was on the very best horse in that race, and knowing that it was one of the final races of my career. So I would say probably Untappable, and just having that absolute powerhouse underneath of you, and having to, stay cool and stay confident, knowing you've got the best horse.
Kentucky Derby on Saturday, Oaks on Friday, the 2 biggest races this week, but there are a lot of graded stakes, a lot of grade 1s. We do race today, Thursday, with 3 stakes and a plethora on Friday and Saturday. I'm going to throw this one to Caitlin first and then to Scott. Besides the Kentucky Derby and the Oaks, what race are you most looking forward to this week? That's from Mark in Sacramento. Caitlin.
By the way, Rosie, I'm really happy that you said Shanghai Bobby. He's one of my all-time favorite horses. But Mark from Sacramento, I'm going to say probably the return of Cody's Wish in the Churchill Downs Stakes. Been waiting to see him back. He's going to be cutting back to those sprint distances from the one-turn mile, but not too big of a cutback. But he's a horse that I'm thinking is going to have a really big campaign this year. The older male division is pretty void at the moment. Flightline obviously missing and a few others retired. So I'm wondering if maybe there's a chance this horse could try to stretch out later on in the year, but I think he's going to have a really big campaign. So looking forward to seeing Cody's Wish. Scott, what about you? Sorry.
Yeah, for my the races I'm looking towards most are the Alley Sheba on Friday. We get to see the return of last year's Kentucky Derby runner Rich Strike, West Will Power, and Art Collector after their big efforts in New Orleans, and also the American Turf, which has Major Dude and a couple of other really talented horses, including Carl Speckler for Chad Brown.
All right, let's move back to the Oaks and the Derby. And Scott, the time has come for you to reveal your Kentucky Oaks selections coming up tomorrow.
Yes, it is, Joe. It is tomorrow, and I'm going to start off with Southlawn, a horse that become fond of. Norm Cassie mentioned earlier, myectomy, really a difference maker for this horse. Coming off the freshening, has rattled off 2 straight wins down in New Orleans, appears to be doing very well. Know I'm going to get an aggressive but not overly forward trip from Southlawn under Ray Gutierrez. Pretty Mischievous ran second to Southlawn in the Fairgrounds Oaks. I'm hoping it's a repeat of that event down in New Orleans in late March. Pretty Mischievous, tough draw, but I think she's going to overcome it. Wet Paint and Botanical and the Alice Look make up the 3rd, 4th, and 5th spots, Joe. The 3 Brad Cox runners, Wet Paint from off the pace. Botanical will be up close. The Alice Look should be mid-pack along the inside.
All right, we'll flip over to my Oaks picks, and Southlawn on top for me, too. I just think she's going to get the right trip. I like... Pretty Mischievous, too, and Southlawn handled her pretty easily in the stretch, and I know Pretty Mischievous is putting the blinkers on. She's got to work a trip from post position number 14. Defining Purpose, I really, 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 really like, and I love that 12-1 price. I was going to put her on top. There's other horses that want to be forward. That was a short stretched mile in the 16th race that she won last out, and horses were getting to her at the end. I think the Ashland was by far the strongest prep top to bottom. Some of the fillies aren't getting in to the Kentucky Oaks, so we'll see them down the line. Julia Shining, etc. Defining Purpose will be on all of my tickets. Botanical, she needs to stay in the clear. She's going to have tactical speed. I think she is the best of the Brad Cox Oaks fillies. Wet Paint for 5th, picking up a lot of pieces, and she can win it. And then Pretty Mischievous again has to overcome that post. But I think the blinkers of all the horses that are adding them might help her the most. We are going to go from the Oaks to the Kentucky Derby, Scott. And once again, you're up first. Only took us 7 months to handicap this race.
Yeah, it was a fun 7 months, some ups, some downs. And in the end, I didn't think it would happen, but I did end up on Angel of Empire. You had on top of the Risen Star. I had amongst the mix there. Thought that was his day, but I love the progression. A dominant performance in the Arkansas Derby. Appears to be training well. I think he should get a nice mid-pack trip off a contentious, not overly fast-paced. Tapit Trice, going to need to work out a trip from the 5-hole. Not in love with that post, but everything else fits for this son of Tapit, as Tapit looks to get his first Kentucky Derby winner. Verifying, running off a little bit earlier. A little bit concerned about the inside draw. Considered making this one my top pick about 10 days ago, but that inside draw was a little bit concerning to me. Hard to dismiss outright Forte as a gambler. If you have a horse that's the favorite of 3-1 in a 20-horse field as your 4-horse, you're probably supposed to fade. I might use them in the 3rd slots, potentially the 2nd slots with my top couple of picks in the vertical wagers, but not going to play him on top. And then 5th, liked what I heard from Rosie on Skinner. Sounds good from John Sheriffs. I think this horse has a big shot to pick up the pieces, especially if the pace is hot. I don't know if he's going to pull a Giacomo, but he should be running on well, Joe.
So many different horses that could have put in my top 5. And for me, if I'm between a few horses, I'm going to go with the bigger price, and I'm also going to go with the horse that I think has the opportunity to get a better trip. And I mentioned it earlier. We had a 45-1 opening half in the Derby last year, and it was won by a horse at 80-1 from far off the pace. That's not going to happen this year. The Derby, since the point system, has been won the vast majority of the years by a horse that's been in the first flight or maybe leading up to second flight. And Kingsbarns not getting a lot of hype as far as Todd Pletcher's Derby runners or the Derby in general. I think he's going to get a great trip. He just won it a mile and 3/16 at Fairgrounds. He extended his stride going a mile and 3/16. He looks like a horse that can run all day, and he's got a high cruising speed. I love those qualities in the Kentucky Derby runner. I love Angel of Empire as well. I like the fact that he showed better tactical speed in the Arkansas Derby last stop. Disarm is coming into the race an unconventional way for Steve Asmussen, but he's always been very high on him. He's going to pick up a ton of pieces, maybe follow in the hoofsteps of his sire Gunrunner and finish third in the Kentucky Derby and be an even better older horse. No knocks on Forte, man. I'm not going to take a 3-1, 7-2 favorite as my top pick when there's several others I think are as good as him. And 2 fills, I'm rooting with this horse with my head, but even more so with my heart. I'd love to see Larry Ravelli and Jareth Loveberry win a Kentucky Derby. Larry and I share the same birthday. We're both Illinois breds and known the guy for a long time. So you root for people in this game, and I'm certainly rooting for Larry and Jarrett to make a nice showing here in Kentucky Derby 149. All right, lots of wagers on the agenda the next few days. You got to try to ration your bankroll, Scott, to a certain extent, or you can take advantage of this, which is sharing your wager with friends. They can share their wagers with you. It's available only on TwinSpires.
Tremendous wagering, man. You always hear at Churchill Downs, I think the best in the business, but even better come Oaks and Derby Day. So many different ways to go. You want to spread your bankroll out. You want to play pick 5, pick 6s. Don't have quite the budget you want, maybe half of what you want. Well, share your bets with your friends. Bet share option only available on TwinSpires. You can share the link on Twitter and whatnot, or you can just do it privately. Avoid having to make money transfers, Venmos, pen pals. Just use the bet share option at TwinSpires.
If you're not a TwinSpires member yet, why not? What are you waiting for? The official online betting partner of the Kentucky Derby offers you a risk-free bet up to $25. Use the offer code RACE25 at sign-up on your computer or your mobile device. Wagering on TwinSpires is fun, safe, it's easy to use. Join today and bet from anywhere. Reincarnate on the racetrack here at Churchill Downs. And Scott, we've been projecting the pace. We showed you our pace projector that you and I put together yesterday, and he was the horse we think is most likely to go to the lead.
Yeah, not necessarily just in the past performances, but kind of intent coming in from Southern California, knowing not being on the lead the last couple of starts has not resulted in his best efforts, and prior to that, he was on the lead in his 2 best career efforts. Just think that they really have no other reason than not to send and be aggressive. There are horses to his inside, but Reincarnate, I'd be very surprised if not on the lead, isn't really aggressive in the early going on the Hall of Famer Johnny V.
Rosie, when we talk about horses we think might make the leader be forward, you can look at past performances, you can look at the way they've been training, you can also look at the rider, and Johnny Velasquez has won the Kentucky Derby with forward horses before.
Yeah, and Johnny is definitely the most experienced rider in the field for sure, and in my opinion, the best rider in the country, and rides very well forwardly placed, and I think this horse has all the speed to get to a forward place in the Derby. My question is he good enough? He certainly looks good on the track out here, but we'll have to see how that shakes out on Saturday.
All right, that's the final episode. We're going to put a bow on the Kentucky Derby morning workout show, Scott. We race live today, Derby, Friday, Oaks Day, Saturday, Kentucky Derby Day. Whew, we made it.
Yeah, my final thought is, just overall, just an honor to be out here to get to see these top horses in the land, top 3-year-old males and females. I took, obviously, based on my top picks, came in having Angel of Empire in the mix. Left after seeing these horses for 11 days, being confident and using Angel of Empire on top, but keying in the vertical wagers. I'm hoping what I saw, what I heard, those that see these horses in the morning comes true, that Angel of Empire is going to run a career best effort.
All right, final thoughts. Next from Rosie Napravnik up on the 4th floor. Rosie, it's been great to have you.
It is so good to be out here, and people ask me all the time, do I miss it? And I'll tell you what, I don't always miss the lifestyle. It's tough, but being out here and watching these horses train, handicapping the Derby, seeing all these good horses, all the connections, it really does make me miss it, and I wish I could swoop in and ride the Derby each year. Final thoughts, I hate to go with all the favorites, but I think Wet Paint and Forte are the best horses in the race, and also I think they have the post positions and can get the trips to get it done. So I do have a couple more interesting picks underneath that, so we'll have to see how much money my picks can make. But let's see what you have to say on the backside, Caitlin.
Just been an honor to be here, as Scott said as well, and just be in the presence of such amazing horses and amazing people. It's been so fun. I'm not a morning person, but maybe this has turned me into a morning person, because this was just so cool. I enjoyed this so much, and it was able to change my mind a little bit on some horses that I maybe wasn't as interested in and maybe hadn't used. So gonna come in handy here in a few days. What about you, Joe?
I want to thank Brandon Stauble for his insight, James Scully as well, and we just got a great television department at Churchill Downs. A lot of dedication, a lot of people with short sleep, 11 days in a row of this workout show, not to mention the races during the afternoon as well. A great television crew each and every day here at Churchill, led by Keith Wetzler. Special shout outs to Michael Canali, who is our producer on the show, Mark Johnson, who comes in every Kentucky Derby too. We couldn't do it without the team, man, and it's not necessarily easy to put this thing together, but we do love doing it.
Yeah, we're the faces that are in front of the camera, but there's so many people, like you said, waking up early, coming out here each and every day to get the footage. They're out here, some of them earlier than us, to get those 5:15, 5:30 type works. I'll give an extra shout out to Tomas Garza, doing a lot of the video work. We get to work with Tomas quite a bit. Head down to him in New Orleans. He does a lot of work that doesn't get praised or known, but thanks to the whole team, it's been a tremendous experience and another great year.
Yeah, so many people on our own television crew that we could give individual shout outs to, but we'd be here another 15 minutes. We just want to thank all of you out there. My final thought, let's put them in the starting gates. May the best horse win. You know there's going to be troubled trips. You know that some of these horses are going to be better sprinters, better older horse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is no race like the Kentucky Derby coming up on Saturday. We thank all of you for joining us on the Kentucky Derby Morning Workout Show. We thank all of our guests that have joined us during the course of the last 11 days. It's Derby, everybody. Post time at Churchill Downs, 12:45.